Let's get on with our next guest that's here. He's actually live in the studio. Isaac, it is nice to see you here, my friend.
Likewise.
Our guest tonight is Isaac Weishaupt. He's an independent researcher of the occult, conspiracy theories, symbolisms, aliens, and the Illuminati. For over 20 years, he's explored these subjects and continues his ongoing mission to determine if this reality is the truth or a cunning holographic deception. An avid fan of pop culture, film, and music, he's compiled many works for explaining occult symbolism and providing analysis on these subjects. You can check out his website, which is IlluminatiWatcher.com. A lot of great stuff out there. His book is called A Grand Unified Conspiracy Theory, The Illuminati, Ancient Aliens, and Pop Culture. It attempts to extrapolate rational arguments from various conspiracy theorists and present them in a format that anyone can understand and see the grain of truth within. Isaac, again, it's an honor to have you here, my friend. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday night.
Thanks, appreciate it. I was waiting for you to cue the spooky music when you were reading my bio there.
Well, let's talk a little bit. What inspired you at what age to go down this path? You've been a researcher, it sounds like, digging into these subjects for 20 years. What age did you get started with all this? What kind of prompted you into this?
Well, all right, let me back up. So
go ahead.
I was born in the late 70s, so I'm kind of an 80s baby. So I kind of came into this realm of supernatural stuff in the 90s, and that was, shows like the X-Files were popular, and, Independence Day with the aliens and stuff. And then, so it started out with just an interest in alien stuff, like that movie Fire in the Sky,
Yeah, the Travis Walton.
Yeah, the Travis Walton story, right, yeah. And, it was so terrifying, and I had an interest in horror films as well. And so I would just be into all this stuff without putting much critical thinking into it. And it was just always something I was interested in. And, over the course of a few years, my buddy turned me on to this book by William Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse. That's kind of like one of the, sort of like the Bible for conspiracy theories almost, because it's kind of one of the first big books to make it. And I read through the book, and, I was mostly into aliens at that point, and they talk about, the Denver International Airport and about how there's aliens under there, and all these secret documents with Majestic 12 stuff and Roswell and all that. And, like anyone else, it's fascinating. And plus, you always wonder if there's someone else out there in the universe. So, again, I was just kind of lightly into it then. But then, just like, I hate to use the cliche synchronicity, but over the course of a few years of some synchronistic events, I met some people that were into the similar stuff, and I got this VHS tape of David Icke doing, it's called Freedom Road. I think it was his first one. Mm-hmm. It's from 98, I think.
Okay.
And it was, I don't know if the audience is familiar with David Icke, but he's probably the most popular conspiracy theorist out there, unless you want to count Alex Jones as a theorist. But anyways, he's the guy that talks about the British royal family being reptilian shapeshifters and all that. So anyway, I'm watching this VHS tape, and over the, it's like a 6-hour tape. It was just him lecturing in front of a screen.
Right.
And and he's going into all this wild stuff about serpents and all these ancient things with obelisks, and like I remember watching it, like trying to make it through, and I'd like fall asleep, and I wake up and he's going off about these obelisks and how all these phallus, how it's a phallus and all this, you could feel a surge of power running through you when you're inside of one and all this craziness. And I was like, this guy's kind of nutty. So,
but that's what gets people's interest up is the craziness.
Sensationalist, yeah.
Right, exactly.
So I started following him, and then he had another, similar lecture to come out, and then he had the books, and I read through the books, and like it's one of those things that the brain's a funny thing. You gotta hear the information, and then you've got to like hear it again, because the first time it's like it's too much, and there's too much he's talking about.
What did he say?
It's too crazy, and you're like, I just don't understand what he's saying. So I mean, I remember at the time I was a mechanic, and I put his lectures on MP3, and I would listen to it while I was working. And like I probably listened to his lecture. I'd say I listened to it a dozen times in a row. Not in a row, sorry, just a dozen times. You know. And eventually it started catching on. I'm like, okay, I kind of get what this guy's saying. And no, then you got these shows, the Ancient Aliens shows. And then they put visuals to what he's saying, and you know, of course, most of the people on the Ancient Aliens are, I've read enough debunking stuff that it's kind of like, well, some of these guys are stretching it a little bit, but some of the stuff is legit, you know. So anyway, I had this interest in all this stuff, and then I started the website about maybe 3 years ago. And originally the website, the concept was, it was just something I was screwing around to do just to build a website. It was originally I started with like the freebie version on WordPress, and you know, I was like, okay, this will be a blog for people that are into the stuff I'm into. You know, horror films, rap music, heavy metal, a little bit of conspiracy here and there.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, screw it. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't. Oh, this is for me. You know.
Right.
There's got to be people that are into this. You know, and you know, as the months went by, as the web traffic dictated. Like I was like, okay, what are people really into? What do they like of mine that I'm putting out there? And it was always the conspiracy stuff. And I was like, yeah, man, okay. So I would start researching more, and you know, repeat that for a couple years. And then after the first year and a half or 2 years, I was really starting to get a lot of web traffic. And I thought, well, you know, because I feel like, you know, my shtick, if you were to label me with a shtick, is I'd like to be able to take what all the theorists are saying and kind of translate it so everyone can understand it and not go straight to, oh, they're insane and I'm not going to listen to this. I'm going to keep, you know, drinking the aspartame and, you know, whatever. Give me the fluoride, that kind of stuff.
Right,
like, I want, my argument is like, some of these guys have legitimate arguments, and there are people trying to manipulate us, and it kind of bugs me when I try to talk about some of the stuff with some people and they don't even want to hear it. Like, and I'm like, even if you don't want to go to people shape-shifting into reptiles, at least understand that, like, the pharmaceutical industry is not your friend.
Right.
Like,
because it's all based on money and greed.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you know, and I took a few. Actually, let me kind of back up and insert something else in there. I was actually interested in when I went to college, I took a couple classes on politics, and before I took them, I no care in the world for politics, but then I started to understand how the process worked, and then I got really into it, and then I started watching you know, Fox News, and then I'd listen to the radio shows, and because I didn't really have a political belief. But I was in the military at one point. I got out now, but when I was in, you know, it's predominantly Republican ideas, and you know, I got out and I was like, oh, I'm a Republican, without even thinking about it, without even knowing what they meant.
Right.
And most people they don't even know what it means.
Right.
You ask them, they're seeing the left and the right wing, no clue. You know, and so I took this politics class and I was like, oh, okay, so this is how the thing works. And then I started paying attention, and then, you know, you start picking up and you're like, dude, like, they're all lying. Like, all these people are lying. Like, at first I was like, I started watching Fox News, and I was like, dude, they're lying all the time. You know, not 100% of the time. I'm not going to say they're liars. I'm just saying there's a lot of misleading information on there.
Well, one thing I find really interesting, one of my hobbies, Isaac, that I've been doing for years. I've been an amateur radio operator since I had interest in ham radio when I was 4 years old. I've been an amateur radio operator for 40 plus years. And I listen to a lot of shortwave broadcasts. And what is really interesting, and now we're kind of going outside the bounds of talking about conspiracies and stuff, is if you take a look at, if you listen to news sources from other places in the world, and I'm not talking like BBC America,
okay,
and people see BBC America or whatever on their cable, you know, that's, or even RUTV and stuff like that. I think all that is American broadcasting with a little foreign twist to it. But if you sit down and you listen to you know, Radio Beijing and some of these programs coming out of the different parts of the world where the news it's not so biased. American journalism and American reporting, there's a lot of falsity to it. There's a lot of statements that are made, you know, they throw a little word in here or there to kind of throw people off. But I agree. It's interesting to me how you can kind of get so many different perspectives, but listening to it outside of this country, I think you get a little bit more of the story. It's kind of like the MH17 that just went down.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody in the reporters in this country, they make some pretty bold and blanket statements without even knowing the facts. Of course, the airplane did go down. Terrible, a huge loss of life. My heart goes out to those people and all their families. But again, when you start looking at, you kind of start putting all the pieces together, there's a lot of sensationalism that's thrown in on our side from time to time.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because okay, so like I run the website and I monitor, how many hits it gets every day or whatever. And I've noticed there's a definite formula, and that formula is the classic adage of if it bleeds, it leads. And, I try not to take advantage of every tragedy and, but I could. I mean, every tragedy that happens, I could just make a post and say, just come up with something, say, here's something awful that happened, and this is why the Illuminati did it. I could do that solely and get tons of hits and ad revenue and all that. The only time I do, because there's a little bit of an ethical issue I have with it, because, like, for instance, like the Malaysia flights, I've got a couple posts about that.
Right, and I'm actually looking at them right now. I mean, and your website is kind of a culmination of all these strange, not I shouldn't say strange, but different outlooks on a lot of these topics.
Yeah, don't say strange. I did that to I was at a book signing once, and I was talking to I believe she was a medium. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, she was telling me her process. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And she got mad. Not weird, different. I was like, okay, all right. So I learned quickly. It's not strange or weird. It's different.
It's just different. A different view.
But yeah. So like so yeah. I try to post about like for instance the Malaysia flights. Like like you said, it's an awful thing. But there's conspiracy theories out there. And justifiably so. If they're not going to give us the straight facts of what's going on, I mean, how does a plane disappear?
Right.
And
that was one of the questions. If we could talk on that a little bit, let's just kind of go while we're talking about it. We did get some questions sent in about the Malaysia flight MH370. And its whereabouts. Where do you think it's at? I mean, some people say it's in the ocean in a million pieces. Of course, there's some people that believe that it could be sitting on a runway in a hangar in some third world country. They still haven't found this thing. So many different theories, so much, all the different data that's been presented. But at the end of the day, they still can't produce the physical aircraft. What's your thoughts on that, Isaac?
I think we aren't going to know what happened to it until the powers that be want us to know what happened to it. There's plenty of different conspiracies, like I said on the website. I try to kind of scout out all the somewhat reasonable conspiracy theories and post them. And like one of the more interesting ones is there was this show, and my memory is terrible. There was a show on NBC, I think it was. And it's called The Event. That's right. It's called The Event. And in 2011, this thing aired. And on I think it was the first episode, there's an airliner, and it gets swallowed up into a vortex. And then on the next episode, it comes out of this vortex in the sky in a whole different area out in the deserts, and it crashes. And then the next scene shows, the Men in Black or whoever, the suit's pulling up, and there's scattered bodies everywhere. And
so, are you saying that 370 and 17 could be? Are there people that are making connect? Well,
that's the conspiracy connection. And that's pretty easy to debunk, because it's like talk to someone who had a family member that got on 370, and see if they ended up in the wreckage of 17, or is that the flight 17?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't have enough time to. I've got like a full-time job, so this isn't my full-time job. So I try to cram in as much of this stuff as I can on my. This is my part-time hobby at this point. But I don't know if it's possible. It seems too crazy. That seems a little too incredible.
Well, it is. It does. But when you think about it, when you start thinking about it a little bit, covering it up, Here it is, same airline, same airliner, 777s. I mean, both cases, and the 777 has got a unbelievable record to it.
The odds are incredible.
The odds are incredible, but it is strange that both both guys, both airplanes, I should say, one disappears and then one comes out of the sky. I think realistically it was just happenstance, and it happened that way. But again,
I think it's strange that they can't find the I'm just an idiot. What do I know? But to me, it seems like if a plane blows up over, even if you do believe that they couldn't track this thing, somehow they were able to turn off the transponder, which I don't believe.
Right.
Even if they could do all that, I would think, we'd have to have the capability of having satellites that can just take a look over the water, look for debris that looks like a wrecked airline. Seats would float. Big chunks of sheet metal would float.
Right.
And it's weird to me that they don't have that capability.
This whole thing, if I don't know how old you are, but have you ever heard of a movie called Millennium? Chris Christopherson was in it. Oh, it's an old movie. It's out of the 80s. And it's it's interesting, though. It's an interesting story. What it is it's about these time travelers from the future. And what they do is when airplanes are going to crash, they actually time shift, get on the airplane, get the passengers off the airplane because those people are needed for another reason at another time.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was. It's been. I'd have to take a look at the IMDb, but it is an interesting concept, and it is an interesting concept with the Malaysia flight that. I'll be careful. I'll tread here, but how. Being that it's the same airlines and it was carrying it was carrying a lot of people of Asian descent. I don't know. It's interesting. Very, very, very interesting. But check out Millennium if you want to watch something really wacky and funny.
That's one of those. That's primarily, besides, like I was saying, my goal of being able to kind of translate and kind of not dumb it down, but kind of dumb it down for people. The conspiracy theories out there is I'm really into pop culture, movies, music videos, symbolism, all that stuff. So I more or less look for that stuff in everything I watch and then present it there's just so many things that, you could just say they're coincidences, but they're really, really strange. There was a book called The Final Jihad written a few years before the Oklahoma City bombings. And in the book, there's a guy named Tom McVeigh who blows up a federal building in Oklahoma. A few years later, a guy named Tim McVeigh blows up a federal building in Oklahoma. So, what are the odds of that? And then, and that's even in the book, because I talk about how the author of that book, his brother was connected to intelligence agencies and all this stuff.
Well, think about, but now, right now there's this, I don't know if you're following it at all, Isaac, this lawsuit with the Oklahoma bombing, the guy that his brother was tortured. His brother was I don't know the full details, but I know the trial is going on in federal court here in Salt Lake City about this guy was put in prison. He actually was a witness to the Oklahoma City bombing. He claims the FBI have videotape of it. They have video surveillance of it. it was filmed. Pretty sad to think that somebody might have been waiting around for it to happen. And I guess when this gentleman, and I'd have to look at the KSL story a little bit more, but when you think about it, this gentleman's brother he's now dead. He was beaten to death in prison several times. All kinds of strange things are coming out of the Oklahoma City bombing. And now this is not conspiracy stuff. This is a federal trial that's taking place right here and now downtown.
No, I haven't heard any of that. That's like I said, this is my part-time hobby, so there's a ton that just goes right past me.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a documentary, I haven't seen it yet. I think it's called A Noble Lie about the Oklahoma City bombings, and it's just like the 9/11 thing. It's just one of the things I haven't taken the time to sit down and what all is every conspiracy theory about this? what has validity, what doesn't. I haven't had the time to sit down and do it. I need to, but that's interesting. I'll definitely have to look that up.
Well, yeah, it is interesting, and some of that stuff goes way back. If you want to talk about conspiracies, there was a book written, and the name of it actually slips my mind, about the Titanic. There was a book written in the 1800s, a boat called it's called The Sinking of the Titan, how it hits an iceberg. Yeah. And it's just kind of coincidental, but it is just like that TV show and these different books and stuff that we see and hear about. Was it, now this may sound crazy, but was it somebody that got a glimpse of the future and wrote a book about it? Was it premonition? Was it just a chance? Who knows? But it is interesting when you find books, and especially stuff that's been laying around out there for a long time, and then an event very similar takes place, kind of like the McVeigh thing.
Yeah, that's a topic I cover in the book too, predictive programming, which for people who don't follow this kind of stuff too in depth, it's basically, in the book I kind of sum it up to, it's, when you brief people, I was always taught when you brief, you do, you hit three things. You tell them what you're going to tell them,
right?
Then you tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them, right? So to me, the predictive programming is the same thing. And if you want to believe that there is this Illuminati group that secretly runs all the major industries from behind the scenes, you could argue they're doing predictive programming. They're telling you what is going to happen on a narrative. And like, for example, in the book I go through this in more detail, but basically like the film Avatar, it's this idea that, they show us this film, and it basically, the masses can watch it and say, oh, that's kind of strange. So these people can, kind of like hook up their minds to computers and then hijack these blue bodies of these creatures and, go hang out in this avatar world and then, do whatever, right? That's kind of strange. So they present this information so that in preparation that someday you could, like, it's almost like putting it out in the universe, right?
Sure. You want to take a call?
Sure.
All right. Caller, welcome to K-Talk.
Hey.
Hey, how are you, Arv?
Hey, your guest actually listens to you.
It's because I'm too stupid to keep talking.
Well, same here, so see you. Anyway, I was just going to say this, that, I actually got tired of waiting to see if God or some some ancestor to pop into my dreams or sit me on the edge of the bed and say, Harv. So I went and did peyote one time. That's been a few years. I had some insights. I really did.
You're not on peyote right now, are you, sir? I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. Bad joke, sorry.
You are. You're a great gift. I was driving, so it wasn't until I got home till I could get you guys on the computer to hear you. I'm going to have to download this whole program so I can hear everything. I'll admit myself, because personally I disgust myself. Anyway, no, I'm not on peyote right now, although I have taken it. It won't kick in for 15 or 20.
Well, we've been on the air about 15 or 20, so I don't know.
How good was that, Chris? How good was the Chris Walken I just did? Come on.
It was
be
good.
honest.
It was good.
Was it good or was it great?
It was great, Harv.
Oh, now you think I have your address or something. You're afraid. Now you're afraid, and so you're gonna lie to me. Okay, fine. Anyway, hey, there is a big world out there, and it disgusts me that I don't know. I hear all sorts of things. They want to shut it down so they can have control. They want to do this because they can do that. This, the other thing. I think it's all about fear. I think people shut down out of fear, and fear is a killer.
Yeah, that's right. You know, David Icke, he explains this the best with the fear thing. He says that the fear is like a state of low vibrational density energy, and he believes these reptilians are able to feed off of that like a sustenance. You know, because everything in the world is like a waveform energy, and you know, fear is just one sort of thing that happens that, you know, like there was a guy, Dr. Emoto, he did the water experiment. What's that?
Vampires.
Vampires, that's right. From the constellation Draco.
They scare me. And we keep going. No, I'm on board with you, bro.
Hey, do you know that I just read the other day, you know that movie Twilight, the main guy, the Robert Pattinson guy.
I stayed out of all that kind of stuff because I just didn't want it in my head, but keep going.
Yeah, so this guy,
I get it.
This Robert Pattinson guy, he got named as, you know, the guy who's going to play Edward on the movie, and you know, I remember lots of girls seeing that and being like,
sure.
"Oh, this guy, you know, why they choose him?" Like, you know, I guess he's not fitting to what the book describes him as, and whatever. So, and you know, I didn't think much of it, but then I just read the other day they picked Robert Pattinson because he's got he's a descendant of Vlad the Impaler, the original Dracula. So, yeah, so it all plays together with this
it runs through
royal
the DNA.
bloodline.
It's just like those guys, not to mention the fact that them guys were down in South America, that microbiologist from England started eating, not peyote, but whatever down there, and he started realizing that the reason the medicine mans were getting their signals because they were communing with the herbs. The plants were communicating through the DNA, through the medulla oblongata. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to try that. Well, so I did with the peyote, and I haven't been back to it, and that's been 10 years, because it's starting ready to dab.
Hey, we've got a couple calls stacking up. Why don't you sign off with your walk-in interview or your impersonation?
Well, I just want to say, thank goodness for KTKK.
Okay, Harv, have a good night, my friend.
Thanks.
All right, guys, love you.
Good night.
Peace out. Bye.
Love you too, Harv.
I don't know if I dumped the other callers. The lines were all lit up, and now they're not. Well, anyway, so what were we talking about?
At one point, I got off track with the evolution of this website. You know, like I said, I was starting off, and it was more of a niche thing, and then I noticed the traffic would say, you know, most of the people are interested in the conspiracy theories, so I started going that route. And since then, I'd say about a year into it is when I noticed, like, okay, let me just focus on the conspiracy stuff. So that requires me to read tons of books, listen to tons of podcasts, watch all these YouTube videos, you know, and eventually, and every time I do that, I would write some notes down, just because, like, my memory sucked. So I just write notes down to jot down the nugget of good thing I hear on whatever podcast or whatever. And you know, eventually I had enough that I thought, you know, I think I could write a book about this and kind of extrapolate all of the relevant details of everyone's theories that make sense, present it in a book that's kind of like a beginner's guide to conspiracy. It's the kind of book you could give to your mom and have her read.
And she'd understand.
And she'd understand it, right? Because a lot of my friends and stuff and family, they would ask me about this kind of stuff because it's so outlandish, and you know, I don't do a great job explaining it, you know, right off, you know, on the spur of my heels, but like when I can sit down and write down and formulate my thoughts, it kind of makes sense.
All right, welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Our guest tonight is Issac Weishaupt. You know, I was thinking, Isaac, during the break, I did like Harv's impersonation, but here's Christopher Walken performing Lady Gaga. Maybe you get a kick out of that.
I want to hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them Let 'em hit me, raise it, baby. Stay with me, I love it. Luck and intuition play the cards with spades to start. And after he's been hooked, I'll play the one that's in his heart. Oh! Oh, oh! Oh! Ah! Oh, E! Oh! Oh, oh! I'll get him high.
That's for you, Harv, and yours was close, without a doubt. Speaking of Lady Gaga, when that's another name that comes up sometimes with Illuminati, and a lot of these pop artists and these music singers, these performers, and there's a lot of Illuminati symbolism. Do you think that there's a real tie there, or do you think that do you think that again it's just people with vivid imaginations, or do you think there's some realistic things going on there?
I think that these artists are pawns for the music industry, which is allegedly run by Illuminati members who have their own agenda and their own purpose. And the purpose for it would be, that's up for debate. But to me, it seems like there's a reason they put these symbols out there, and the reason is to talk to your subconscious, right? So it's kind of like it's no different than the McDonald's having the golden arches. It's a logo. It's a calling card to plant the idea into your subconscious, because when people talk to you, you hear you hear the sound, and there's pressure waves that that go to your ear, then your brain decodes it and says, right, this is what the word means, right? So a symbol, you don't need to have that kind of cognitive response. It goes into your eye, and then it can store right into your subconscious. And like Lady Gaga, for instance, she's always doing what they call the 666 hand gesture over her eye, which is like a twofold meaning. It's a symbol where you put your fingers in the OK, where you put your thumb to your forefinger, and if you look at it, it's 3 6s because they're one on top of another, because your middle ring and pinky form the top end of a 6. So she does that, and then she puts it over the one eye, and then that's a symbol for the all-seeing eye of Horus, which that goes all the way back to it goes back into these ancient Hermetic schools and mystery schools that the Illuminati and the bloodlines of all the people who are running the show today, it all traces back to them, because back in Egypt they had these mystery schools, and people would travel from all around that area, stay at these schools for 40 years or whatever it was, learn everything there was to know in the universe about mathematics, astrology, you name it, and they would go back to their respective countries, and these were the people that got admired, because back years ago the people that had the most knowledge were respected like rock stars, like scientists. They were rock stars,
right.
And there was only a certain elite that got to go do this, and most of the people just were the serfdom that had to stay back and plow the fields and got told what to do. So anyway, all this traces back to these mystery schools, and the mystery schools of Egypt, that traces back even further to like the Sumerians and the Babylonians, and like the original cultures that gave us the things like the writing. Like the Sumerians had the cuneiform script, which is the first version of writing, and supposedly all this comes from a certain bloodline of privileged people who know the secret nature of the universe, and they use that to their advantage. And you see them showing off in these music videos by having Lady Gaga do this thing, and what that tells, and what, it's like, okay, so what harm is that she's doing that? What do I care, right? Well, it's it's got multiple reasons, and one of them is, these bloodlines are saying to the other bloodlines that all are part of this, like Fritz, one theorist named Fritz Springmeier proposes that there's 13 bloodlines in the Illuminati, and what this does is, one bloodline will put this that owns Lady Gaga will say, do this in the video. She does it in the video, and now the other bloodlines can say, oh, Lady Gaga, she's in the, under Rothschild control or whatever,
Right.
And so that's one purpose for it. Another purpose is supposedly, going back to the symbolism, it goes into your subconscious. And, if, little kids are watching this stuff, like the Katy Perry and the Lady Gagas and the Miley Cyruses, and they're all doing the symbolism. And these symbols, it associates these kids with positive feelings. Like a little kid likes Katy Perry. They watch the video. They see the thing with the eye. Like she'll cover one eyeball up, and they grow up and they're in their 20s, and someone says to them, "Oh, that's an Illuminati symbol." No, it's not. I like Katy Perry. Whatever. So it's no different than how. I hate to use McDonald's again, but it's no different than how like McDonald's and these fast food companies and even the cigarette companies with Joe Camel, they all market to little kids because they know that
that's their future customer.
That's the future customer. Yeah, you brand a child to like your product, you've got a customer for life. And not to mention, like, you get a little kid to want your product, they're going to sell it to the parent easier than the company themselves could.
Right.
Because, little Bobby's crying and moaning in the backseat. He wants
I want
this.
to make cheese. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I totally agree.
So it's like it's all marketing.
Well, I think there's, I've heard so many different, there's so many different opinions you can hear again when you're talking about Illuminati and conspiracy. I think that anybody that tends to be really successful over the top, whether it's in today's I'm not into rap. I like all music. I love all music. I'm not that much into rap, but it seems like right now Jay-Z is kind of the guy, and of course he's tied to the Illuminati with Beyonce. Tied to the Illuminati. Well, is it because he's tied to the Illuminati, or is it because the kids of today will go out and they'll take their lunch money to buy a couple of iTunes tracks instead of eating lunch or getting a snack or whatever, because they want to get the latest and greatest. They want to download all this music and these albums. I mean, a lot of these people, they're just they're billionaires. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Jay-Z's, but watching, this guy owns all kinds of different companies. He owns companies that help brand athletes and take athletes and put them at a different level, sponsoring or advertising, all kinds of different products. He's essentially a marketing guy, is what he is, with a huge checkbook, and he commands a lot of power. So I guess what I'm saying is that right away, when there's a lot of money tied to an individual, and I think with anything, any music, there's so many great musicians out there. It's luck of the draw of who you meet and who you know and who you run into and the break that you get. But just because a guy has got a ton of money or a girl's got a ton of money or they're very, very popular, right away, Illuminati gets hung right over their head.
Yeah, and it's, and I get that it's almost disrespectful, So like if I come on here and I say Jay-Z's in the Illuminati, well, first off, I wouldn't say that. I'd say Jay-Z's owned by the Illuminati. If I say that, I can say that and still believe he's a good rapper. Like I said, I listen to rap music all the time. Of course, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or if the music is getting worse, but like I have a hard time listening to modern music at this point, But so there's not a lot of rap I listen to anymore. I'm the old guy listening to stuff from 10 years ago now, 15 years ago. But Jay-Z's definitely well connected. He's got to be the number one. If you say Illuminati musician, he's got to be number one when people think of who would be involved with this. In fact, I just did an interview. I don't know if I should say the name. It's a really popular music magazine. I did an interview with a journalist that was compiling information on the Illuminati and the hip hop industry, and I don't think that they're going to put that in the magazine because it was supposed to be in the magazine about a month or two months ago even, and it didn't come up. And I emailed the guy, said, hey, what's going on? Is it going to be in the magazine? Because I wanted a copy. Like, it's pretty cool. But it's not being aired. And I joked with him. I was like, oh, they don't want the truth out. Ha ha ha. But like, here it is 2 months later and it's still not out there. And I thought, oh man, maybe so, because, in the last couple, well, I don't want to go into that, but anyways, Jay-Z himself, he's got enough symbolism in his videos and in his message and enough money that I think it's safe to say that if anyone is connected to the Illuminati, it would be him. And I'm actually writing a book on hip hop specifically in the Illuminati, and he's one of the main main rappers I talk about, because there's so much you can go into. So he's got all this stuff involved with Blue. Like, he's got these albums called The Blueprint, and The Blueprint came out on September 11th, 2001. Okay, but that by itself doesn't mean anything, but it starts to raise questions. Then you've got, they named their child Blue Ivy. Wow. Which a lot of people, Cat Williams, he's a comedian, he made a joke on Twitter about Blue Ivy means born living under evil, Illuminati's very youngest or whatever. And a lot of the morons went out there and, oh my God, that's what it means, and like, it was just a joke,
Sure.
But, so he's got that. Then he's got a color called Jay-Z Blue that was supposed to be on a certain brand of automobile. I think it was like a GM that was supposed to come out that never did. And he's got all this stuff with blue. And if you look at the chakra for blue, the chakra wheel for blue is the throat and the ability to speak. And Jay-Z, he's one of the greatest rappers ever. And so obviously he's very good at speaking, and you can tie all that together. Like, he's got certain messages and symbols. Like, I was listening to, there's a guy named Mr. Gates. He has this podcast called Haterazzi. He did a thing called Jupiter, which is about the Illuminati and the music industry. And he talks about how in the video, Jay-Z's got a video called On to the Next One. It was released in a very ritualized fashion because it came out it was the first video of the new year of, I think it was like 2010 or 2011. It was on the Blueprint 3, right? So you got this video. They make a big deal out of it. They play it right at midnight, so it's the first video. And in the video, the lyrics to the song talk about how he's the guy that sets the trends, and it's on to the next one. Like this, I used to wear this kind of clothing, now I wear this one, and I'm the one that sets the trends, right? But the video has nothing to do with that, absolutely nothing. And it's got a lot of strange symbols in it, and a lot of them have to do with water, like boats and waves. And the theory, and I kind of talk about this in the book as well, is it's this push into the age of Aquarius, which is symbolized by the water carrier. So it's part of this Illuminati agenda, and it's, like I said, predictive programming. You start putting these ideas and symbols and themes out there into people's subconscious, and the age of Aquarius is known for it's going to be an evolution of man and technology. And to play into the Jay-Z thing one more time, he was also seen wearing a sweatshirt that says "Do what thou wilt," which is an Aleister Crowley-ism. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, is what he said in one of his. He summoned a spirit of Awas, this holy guardian angel, and he dictated this book that started a religion called Thelema, and in the their main tenet is "Do what thou wilt," and it doesn't. A lot of people confuse it, and myself included, when I first researched it, and think, oh, that's that means just you can just do whatever you want, murder people, rape, everything, but that's not necessarily what he was saying. What Crowley was saying was, you find your purpose in the universe and you do what you need to do to accomplish that. So anyways, he was wearing this, and Crowley, this holy guardian Awas, told him there was going to be 3 ages of man, and Crowley was brought here to push humanity into this third last age of man, which was the Aeon of Horus. So part of Aeon of Horus is this child god worship and pushing us into the age of Aquarius. And so Jay-Z's got all this stuff where he's kind of the spokesperson that says, I'm creating all these trends, I'm doing all this stuff, you follow behind me and everything will be good. And it pushes us into, there's more arguments. You could go even further down this, and, transhumanism.
Well, we've got to take an NBC News break in about a minute. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can get your book at?
To keep it simple, you can go to IlluminatiWatcher.com. I have links all over the website for it, or you can just pick it up on Amazon.com. It's called A Grand Unified Conspiracy Theory. It's got 5 good positive reviews. I swear to you, I don't know any of the people that reviewed it. I'm stoked that people liked it. I think it's got like 4.5 out of 5 stars, so I'm like kind of shocked and happy at the same time that people are interested. Because, some of my friends have the book and they haven't reviewed it yet. So whoever those people are, thank you. But